Weird not to have Susie here next to me. I feel off kilter a little bit. So, welcome back, everybody. We're now reconvening the BBG board meeting. Over the past year, every one of these meetings, we've done a deep dive on one of the networks. We have five entities, and we've done each of the five. We'll be restarting again with VOA. So, David, you're up again in February. We felt we should do one of these meetings for what is known as IBB, because IBB means a lot of things to a lot of different people, and so we felt it would be a good thing to do each year to talk about headquarters, which IBB means a lot of different things, and today you'll hear, and we'll all hear about that and have a chance to answer some questions. Before we do this, though, I want to say a couple words about the interim management team. I called them the Troika, and was told that was bad, so then we switched to IMT, which means interim management team. The board really came to the decision to name this group as their interim head. We figured we'd get a CEO in here really quickly. It would take only, a couple months, 3 months at the max for this team. They've now been, this is their anniversary, happy anniversary, a year, being the, quote, interim management team. Andy's here somewhere, right? Yes, he's still here. With his appointment imminent coming in, the interim will come to an end at some point in our lifetimes, I think. But I wanted, and we'll have a chance at that time to make more formal announcements. But I did, before we dove in, I want to say it's rare to be able to have a group of 3 people working together and find that they do a good job working together, let alone making change to an organization that needs change. And I know I speak on behalf of all the board when we say we couldn't be more pleased and proud of the work that the 3 of you have done over the past year. You're all really impressive individuals, impressive public servants. I know whenever I call, you guys are always working, so I know you've worked incredibly hard, so I apologize to your families for the past year. But the organization is a better place than it was a year ago, significantly. We have a long way to go still, but I think the work that you guys have all done on behalf of this organization and of your country is absolutely phenomenal. So with that, and by the way, you're not leaving. You've all assured me you're not leaving, so that's a good thing. But I just wanted to kind of publicly state the board's thanks and admiration for the work that you've all done over the past year. So thank you, guys. And please, Andy, get approved so we don't have the interim for another year. So with that, let me turn it over to the Troika, as I'm going to continue calling you, to lead us on a tour of IBB. I believe we're same format. This is going to be 45 minutes to an hour presentation and a bit of time at the end for questions. So take it away, Susie.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Over the last year, the board has examined each of our 5 networks and seen powerful examples of their outstanding journalism and compelling content. As the chairman noted, I'm joined today by my colleagues Rob BOLE, Director of Global Strategy, and Andre Mendez, Director of Global Operations. Over the next hour, we will provide you with a better sense of how the International Broadcasting Bureau, IBB, and Technology Services and Innovation, TSI, are transforming and growing the impact of U.S. international media. Before we get to IBB today, it would make sense to spend a little time explaining where IBB came from. IBB can trace its origins to a bureau at the U.S. Information Agency. At the time, the focus of that bureau was the responsibility for the transmission assets of international broadcasting. In 1994, the U.S. International Broadcasting Act established the Broadcasting Board of Governors, and under the Broadcasting Board of Governors, the IBB was created to maintain that responsibility of management of transmission assets. A few years later, another act of Congress in 1998 made the way for creating an independent federal agency, the Broadcasting Board of Governors. At that time, the IBB maintained the responsibility for the transmission assets and also took on the lead role for the administrative or back office functions such as HR and procurement that are typical of an independent agency. So in practice, the IBB has two primary roles: management of the worldwide radio, television, and new media distribution networks, and management of these back office and administrative functions. As you can see from this slide, these two primary roles break down into a number of different functions. During today's deep dive, we will spend time learning more about this wide array of activities. But most importantly today, you will hear about the role that IBB continues to play in coordinating among the federal entities as well as the grantee networks to provide efficiency and greater operational effectiveness where possible. And before we dive any deeper, I'm going to introduce Andre to come up and provide an overview of the staffing and budgets of the IBB and TSI.
Thank you, Susie. Chairman, governors, colleagues, and folks out there watching via streaming. I just wanted to give you a very quick overlook over both the budget and staffing trends that we have experienced over the last few years, so that there is a clear understanding of what the facts surrounding these two areas are. As you can see here, from 2012 to 2015, since our budget was actually just enacted and became law yesterday, there has been a substantial decrease in the funding for IBB, from $72 million in 2012 to $61 million in 2015. Of course, these are just the raw numbers and do not take into account, for example, increases in expenses, the current services, and the rate of inflation that influences those. So these numbers are actually quite a lot more dramatic than they appear at first. Over this period of time, if you calculate, a compounded 5% inflation rate associated with this. So when you look at the number of functions that the IBB performs on a regular basis and how it is, supporting what is an ever-expanding portfolio of technologies and content distribution methodologies, this puts, a little bit of a sobering view into some of the rhetoric that sometimes permeates throughout, media. If you look at at the IBB trend, you also see that over the last 3 years, you've seen a substantial diminution in the number of people that are actually performing these services, from 251 in 2012 to 218 in 2014. So this is definitely not a fast-growing bureaucracy, much to the contrary. From a TSI standpoint, you can see without a shadow of a doubt that over the last 4 years, our budget has declined substantially, to the tune of about 15%, again, without considering the impact of inflation and the growth in current services. While, for example, the price of oil recently has come down, and that will actually provide us with some degree of financial relief, that has not been the case over the last 3 years or so. And on plants that are highly dependent on electrical, energy costs because of the enormous size of the transmitters that we run 24/7, some of them actually powered by diesel oil. This was a very significant aspect. So as you can see, there's been a substantial decrease in the TSI budget as well. And that is also reflected in the number of staff that are supporting it. Here at headquarters, as you can see, there's a substantial diminution. We have a staff that is from a work-life standpoint really approaching a lot of the retirement ages. And so we're seeing a lot of people retire, which has both some good aspects about it, but also some bad aspects about it. We have unbelievably dedicated people that have tremendous amounts of corporate memory that we are losing on a regular basis. And so, to a certain degree, this trend is a little worrisome because we got to make sure that we continue to properly manage this expanding portfolio of distribution technology. And with that, yeah, I'm going to continue on to the global operations now that I've given you a general overview. I'm extremely pleased and honored to be here to do this on behalf of my colleagues in global operations. Over the last year, this is sort of a newly formed organization as a virtue of the IMT, and I have been just unbelievably amazed by the dedication and the willingness of these individuals to buy into a fast-changing program that was necessary. The global operations team faced a lot of challenges. And continues to face some. You can't, you can't erase, decades of situations within a 9-month period. But the truth is that there's been an enormous amount of progress, and it's all due to the amazing dedication of these people that bought into a program. So let me give you some of the details here. Our premises for my presentation. We're a service organization. At the end of the day, that's what we do. We serve the broadcast entities. This agency is not designed to run HR systems or IT systems. We're designed to deliver the message of our broadcasters. We're mission critical. Whether you are an administrative officer, whether you are somebody that is helping on the help desk, where you are an engineer, where you are in the CFO office, every single one of us has a role to play in this entire supply chain management of content that gets distributed all over the world, and everybody is absolutely essential for that to take place. And so when you look at the back office and all of the functions that they do, we have to keep that in mind. We absolutely are mission critical in everything we do. And this is sort of our unofficial motto. Right? We do what we do so others can tell a story. And of course, those others are the broadcast entities. This is, in rough magnitude, the organization. A director on top with the chief of staff being in charge of the Office of Contracts, the Office of Human Resources, the administration, the Office of Security, and the Office of Civil Rights. The OCFO reporting directly to the director, the Office of General Counsel reporting directly to the director, and the Office of Workplace Support and Development, which is brand new, that also developed the reports, at least at this point, directly to the director. Okay? So let me do a little bit of myth busting right now, okay? Because you've just saw some of the numbers from a staffing and budget perspective. The myth is the IBB is an ever-expanding and overstaffed, bloated bureaucracy. This is just not true. Actually, quite honestly, at this particular point in time, and with a lot of the attrition that we have experienced, we are moderately in certain areas to severely understaffed in other areas. And quite honestly, I am concerned that we are in certain areas actually very close to starting to impact the mission by virtue of some of the throughput capacity that we have lost and that we really severely need to address and to remediate. We have lost a substantial number of staff over the last 3 years. The federal aegis, working under the federal aegis, carries a heavy regulatory burden. From an HR perspective, in the CFO office, in the Office of Contracts, and even in the Office of Security, there is a heavy burden that needs to be carried. It is the law. There's reporting requirements. There's all of the rules and regulations associated with contract awards, with hiring people or letting people go, or even retiring people. And so what you would find is that these staff levels that maybe in the private sector might seem large are really not, are actually understaffed for this type of regulatory burden. And unfortunately, over the last 20 years or so, our back office systems are absolutely siloed and they're poorly leveraged. There's an enormous amount of manual work that takes place in this organization from an administrative standpoint because there has not been a cohesive and coherent, articulated strategy for developing an overarching enterprise architecture that can actually bring these things together and eliminate a lot of the manual processes. And they're poorly financed. For better or for worse, every time that there is a budget decision that needs to be made, that has always favored making sure that the broadcast mission continues. It is not uncommon to see it even in the private sector, where some of these initiatives in the back office get relegated to second place to the primary mission. But the truth is that over the long term, this erosion of the ability to move forward from a technological standpoint, for example, really starts to hurt the organization and is actually counterproductive. I trust that over the next couple of years, we will make enormous progress as we look at this in detail under a new aegis. Fiscal year 14 challenges. This was an unbelievably challenging year for a variety of reasons, including some of the management changes that have taken place. Perhaps the toughest budget year ever because of not only the proximity of fiscal year 14 and fiscal year 15. Fiscal year 14 was actually the first year in a long time in which we had a real budget, not a continuing resolution. And with that came the necessity to really change the way that we were doing business, especially because that real budget was a lot lower than previous budgets. Substantial findings in our procurement audit. We had an audit conducted of our entire procurement activity, and we actually were hit with 38 findings. Okay, and a relationship with the POVs was questioned. We have 660 plus POVs, purchase order vendors that operate here and that are an essential part of our delivery of our broadcast mission. And their relationship with the agency was questioned by both the OIG and the IRS. And so we needed to make sure that we address that. Regardless of the validity of the claim, it doesn't matter. We needed to address that. It was something that we wanted to do from an administrative standpoint to start with, but we needed to do it, and we need to move very quickly on this. We had significant management issues in the office of the chief financial officer. I don't need to go into any details, but the truth is that the audit findings, to a certain degree, were a reflection of that, and there was a serious morale problem that had developed in that office by virtue of all of the interactions between the senior management there. Policies, controls, and grantee monitoring were some of the areas where the audit clearly stated that we needed to address these problems. And we lost the top 5 positions. And if you can imagine the impact of that, when you lose your CFO, your deputy CFO, your director of budget, your director of financial operations, and your director of financial systems within about a 7-month period is truly amazing, right? And we'll talk a little bit about how we dealt with that. And we had problems with grantee cash disbursements, and that's something that is unacceptable. When we have to deal with the grantees, approaching cash crunches and not being on time with those payments, that's just absolutely unacceptable, because then we really hit the broadcast mission where it hurts. Other challenges, slow throughput in human resources. This is one area where we truly are now understaffed and where the regulatory burden is such that this is just not commensurate with being able to move in an agile fashion. A disconnect between OGC, the CON, and OCFO. The issues like contracting have such an enormous amount of financial information that needs to be in there from an appropriation standpoint, from an allocation standpoint, and also a substantial amount of legal advice that needs to take place from a policy standpoint. And quite honestly, there was a disjointed set of interactions between these 3 organizations that we're trying to remediate very quickly. Fragmented employee development activities. They were all over the place and without proper branding. So that's one of the reasons why we've decided to create the Office of Workplace Support and Development. Issues like training, health and wellness, employee assistance, the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, they were all being managed okay over different areas, and sometimes with just volunteer effort. For example, in terms of the health and wellness, I have to point out that Tish King really did a tremendous effort in that and brought together a group of volunteers that made tremendous progress in that. But now we're trying to create an aegis under which all of this is done in a coherent and articulate fashion. And we had some of the lowest morale scores in certain areas. We also had some of the highest scores in other areas. But the truth is that there were problem areas where it was very, very critical that we attacked them and dealt with them very, very forcefully. In the Office of Contracts, we had 9 audit findings that are closed, and the rest have been resolved, okay, out of the 38. Now, resolved in the federal government is not the same thing as you might find in the private sector. Resolved means that we have proposed to the auditors that we have a solution for this problem, and so they consider resolved. Now we have to implement it, and they can make sure that they agree with that, and then they close it. So out of the 38, 9 are closed, the rest are resolved. But in a turnaround, what I would think is really a spectacular turnaround. We did a flawless procurement of a new POV model, where over a 9-month period, VOA, the Office of General Counsel, and the Office of Contracts came together in a massive effort to actually deal what is the largest aggregate contract in BBG history, a value of about $300 million over 10 years. This was fraught with peril, because when you have this much money going out there in a contract, you got to make sure that your process, from a FAR standpoint, the Federal Acquisitions Regulation, is absolutely flawless. Otherwise, protests will ensue. As a matter of fact, even when it's really good, the likelihood of protests is enormous, right? And we hit every milestone, we hit every deadline, and we had no protests. And the first migration for 3 language services is complete, for 2 language services and creative services. Africa and Eurasia are complete, 100% signatures from the POVs, which was something that we were very concerned about. These people are absolutely mission critical, important to this organization, and we wanted to make sure that this transition was executed as flawlessly as possible. I am glad to tell you that it was about as good as it could possibly be, and a lot of credit needs to be given to Sherilyn Peters, to Diane Sturgis, and to the Office of General Counsel, Katharina Delisle, and to VOA. People came through and just, Christy Hayes and Steve Springer, amongst others, just came to the table and did yeoman's work, because this was truly yeoman's work. It is extremely complicated, and they brought it home. Completed the first phase of the Procure to Pay. The Procure to Pay is a program that we're putting together that is designed to automate our entire procurement process and the payments process, so that all of this is integrated and removes an enormous amount of manual and paperwork that goes around and gets shuffled. It automates the workflow of signatures, of reviews of contracts, and everything else. The CFO office, we restructured management altogether. I actually took the role of acting CFO. We hired an outstanding budget director. Connie Stevens, stepped in as deputy CFO, and we made it through the year, I would think, with flying colors. We navigated a very complex fiscal year without missing any beats. Resolved the grantee payments issue. I think you can vouch for that. We got a clean audit opinion with findings, nevertheless, but a clean audit opinion, which quite honestly, when we first took over this process, I was a little worried about. I didn't want to be an acting CFO with a qualified audit, quite honestly. Universally praised budget process. The board, OMB, the grantees all agreed that this was the best budget maybe ever in the history of the BBG, and I'm really proud of that, because everybody came together, everybody worked cooperatively, and drove it home. And we'll see what the results are, but I'm pleasantly hopeful, right? We reestablished credibility with stakeholders where it had been severely eroded, and this is a tremendous step for the OCFO. And is a testament to the people that work there and that faced these difficulties and basically decided to turn it around. In the Office of General Counsel, a heavy caseload, a very, very heavy caseload. And again, one of these situations where they have their hands in a lot of things that in the private sector you might not see, from a contracting standpoint, from an HR standpoint, labor relations, and so on and so forth. They have reduced the average litigation numbers in terms of open cases from 55 in 09 to 30 in 14. Okay, and that continues to be substantially, decimated, as we go forward. Multiple case closures. Interestingly enough, whenever there is a negative outcome, everybody hears about it, right? But we have an enormous amount of positive outcomes that, because of confidentiality rules, we can't talk to you about. Okay, you'll have to trust me that we have a lot more successful case closures than not. Numerous appropriation laws issues that needed to be successfully addressed, because with all of these budgets and moving from a continuing resolution to a real budget, there are all kinds of issues about what money you can use and cannot use, and how you can execute transfers and not transfers. So this becomes very complicated, and we need that type of assistance. I want to point out that Dave Kligerman, who just joined us recently, has been an outstanding resource in this arena under Paul's guidance. And a significant reduction in the organizational risk profile, which as a board you should be very pleased about, and the organization in general should be very pleased about. Our risk profile continues to decline on a variety of areas as a substantive effort comes to the table in making sure that that is a priority. In other areas, we've got excellent performance from the administration team dealing with all of those budget issues and severe cuts. The security. Despite 3 or 4 folks that retired, Fred Lang took over as head of security. And basically what I can tell you is this. We did not have any negative outcomes on a security level. And that is the best thing you can say about a security team, especially because at the same time they were very involved in reducing our risk profile by being proactive, especially in collaboration with VOA recently, where we actually sent out a substantial number of protective gear for our journalists in the field. And instructions on how to make proper use of that. It is extremely important as the environment continues to deteriorate. In OCR, with events in conflict resolution, their events are praised by other agencies, attended by other agencies. In human resources, steady, but handicapped by severe understaffing, okay, that we need to address. extremely onerous regulations, as I've talked about already. But nevertheless, a flawless migration to electronic personnel records, sort of the first bastion of automating processes so we get rid of paper. Okay. So the new Office of Workplace Support and Development, it was piloted in July 2014. It will encompass all employee training and development, professional and personal, employee health and wellness, employee counseling, both assistance and career, and the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey Administration. Under the guidance of Dave Milligan, I trust that this will be a tremendous boon year for this office. Ahead. Optimizing operations. This is going to be a supply chain optimization effort like you've never seen before, all conducted simultaneously, which you rarely see even in the private sector, but the needs dictate it. Multiple back office projects in progress, procure to pay that I already spoke about, so that we'd automate that entire chain. Financials, payroll, and HR systems integration, so that we eliminate all of the paper going back and forth with payroll records, with HR records, with the financial allocations for personnel. Electronic time and attendance and electronic invoicing, something that we've been pursuing avidly and have been able to finance until the end of the year. And a web-based 5-tier performance management, moving away from a 2-tier performance management that, quite honestly, hardly ever got exercised, and when it was exercised, it was reduced to 1 tier, pass. Okay? We want to make sure that we have good performance management, not only to make sure that we incentivize people to work at their best, but also to provide people with the feedback that they need. And a web-based learning management system so that we can create courseware and curriculums for employees so that we can improve them from a professional standpoint and from a personal standpoint. And a complete remodeling of processes and workflows, which is, some of the analysis has already been completed over the last 9 months, and now we're going to move to implementation. So, with that, I'm going to turn to Rob BOLE for his presentation on global strategy, and I thank you so much. I'll be back soon.
Great, thank you. So when I was innovation director, I thought about how to get to the future faster. And when I'm in the role of global strategy, I think about where we're supposed to be and how to get there. What these two jobs really have the connection point is the question of transformation. And transformation is the appropriate role for IBB. As an investor, as a motivator, as a catalyst, we have the opportunity to work across all the entities to help them get to a different place. So today, I want to talk about the future through U.S. international media through 4 lines of effort. Things that we do every day in global strategy, a 20-minute window into what we do. And most importantly, I want to hear from 4 extraordinary people who are the oft-times obscured but yet transformational heart of what we do. So establishing a clear transformational, I forget to do this, a clear transformational vision really takes us to think about 3 things. One, the first is audience. Who are we trying to reach? What do they want to know? And how can we be the most influential news source to them? The second and third areas are platform and products. Where can we find the audiences in the future? How will they find the content that is important to them? And how can we enlist them in improving the work that we do and our value proposition to them? Let's jump right into the mix, starting with how we are transferring our approach to audience. An important goal for global strategy is acknowledging and pursuing the next generation of news and media consumers. Africa has more people under the age of 20 than anywhere in the world, and that continent's population is set to double to 2 billion by 2050. In Afghanistan, nearly 47% of the population is under the age of 14, and in Iraq, it's 41%. The youth bulge is real, and the fact is that it's staying with us through our lifetimes. And this has profound consequences on how we create, how we serve, and how we engage these young audiences. SONJA GLOECKLE, who is the Director of Research and Assessment, will talk about how we're getting to know our audiences better than ever before. SONJA, along with her research directors, who works incredibly collaboratively at the entities, are pioneering new methods of getting key audience information into the hands of producers. Perhaps more importantly, how to produce real-time and near real-time insights for journalists who have to work and connect with these audiences every day. SONJA. Here's this.
Thank you, Rob. And while I'll tell you about what we do to get to know our audiences, don't just take my word for it. Those pictures that will be playing in the background show actual BBG fieldwork in action. The research directors are working together to govern a multi-million-dollar budget through consensus and mutual support. Since Rob created my position, VRDs have created more common standards and quality control procedures. We have also reconfigured our core survey questionnaire to reflect the digital platform conversion that we're increasingly seeing in our markets. Research is indeed one of the BBG's best examples of harmonization in action. By sharing data and insight, we not only achieve substantial cost savings, but we can also point to the specific needs and characteristics of each entity's target audience in shared markets. Research collaboration, in fact, does not stop at the BBG entities. We also share survey space with other international broadcasters such as the BBC and Deutsche Welle. This has two advantages for us. Not only does it bring in extra income to this agency, but it also gives us outside validation of our findings. At the BBG, research serves many purposes. First and foremost, it is used to fulfill our reporting requirements. This is not negotiable. It is also used to examine our impact beyond just sheer audience size, and it is used to determine if the language services meet the goals, strategic goals and targets that they set for each fiscal year. It is also used to stay on top of shifting patterns of media use and changing media environments. We want to make sure that we are on the right platforms and also on the media outlets that are the most relevant to our target audiences. And last, but certainly not least, research is tasked to bring insights into what the audience wants and needs from each entity, and which will then feed into content and formatting decisions. You can see that on the one hand, we absolutely depend on quantitative performance metrics. On the other hand, we are tasked to provide actionable insight to frontline producers. And how do we do both? We do it by coming up with new products that marry quantitative hard data with the kind of detailed insights that you can only get from qualitative research. And just to give you one example, this year we are launching an innovative project that marries a national survey with an audience panel. What we will be doing in Ukraine this year, we will be administering a shortened survey questionnaire, and in the course of the interview, we will be recruiting regular VOA and RFERL users to then serve on an audience panel. Once we have this panel set up, we can then regularly consult it in depth on issues that are of programming relevance. And because these panelists were recruited from a national survey, we can feel confident that they in fact represent the full range of BBG users in Ukraine. In FY14, we have already undertaken major steps to expand our methodological toolkit. In Nigeria, we have fielded the first of our impact panels, and we are about to go into the field in Egypt, Afghanistan, and Cambodia. What we do with the impact panels, we collect data via SMS, which will bring the data back to our producers here much faster than it would be with a traditional pen and paper survey. We are also about to launch content panels in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ukraine, Saudi Arabia, and Burma. With those panels, our producers will be able to get daily ratings from the audience close to real time. The audience will be evaluating the programs that were running the previous day, and over the course of a month, we'll get daily ratings to our producers. These are just the first few steps we've been taking. We recognize the critical importance of integrating qualitative and digital insights. We have already taken the first step by moving digital metrics from the Office of Digital Design and Innovation into the research unit. By doing this, we can now, whenever we present findings to a language service, we can present findings from the digital platforms and the traditional platforms side by side to give a service the full footprint of their picture, the full picture of their footprint. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Rob.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonja. I am super excited about the work that the research directors are doing and Sonja is doing. Platforms. From the start, U.S. international media did not follow the same path as international broadcasters like BBC World, Al Jazeera, CCTV, or RT, which has been in the news of late. Rather, we followed, and to be quite honest, we were directed to take the vernacular path, the local path, by engaging media partners around the globe to address audiences. And our path does represent a unique asset for the United States, one that offers actually a competitive advantage where media markets are growing in complexity. Our relationships with media companies around the globe represent a vital last mile link to the audience. One example, it was through our affiliates in Ukraine that we were able to broadcast in live, real time, Miroslava Gangadze talking directly to the people on the Maidan. People on the Maidan got to hear what U.S. policy was and thought about because we worked directly with those media partners, and they stuck with us through that transition. Today, we spend millions of dollars and have dozens and dozens of people managing our satellites, our shortwave, our medium wave, our FM transmissions, as well as a large department dedicated to our digital distribution. These investments are essential and required, but at the same time, half of our audience, half of it, comes from people working out in the field, hand in hand with our editorial staff, in growing and engaging audiences through our media partners. The point is, our partnerships with media companies are a 21st century platform. And I'm asking Oscar Barcelo, our regional marketing officer for Latin America, to spend a few minutes. Oh, I went ahead too quick. Minutes about how he and VOA LATAM have created strong partnerships. Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you, Rob, in fact, and thank you for the opportunity to address you this morning. So indeed, Latin America's media, of course, everybody knows, are fast modernizing with local networks and channels offering an increasingly wide range of content. So BBG's ability to reach audiences in Latin America is its platform, as it were, is through affiliation and collaboration with these media. So understanding them and their needs is the first step in adapting our content strategies to these variously evolving markets. Getting to know their distinct environments has also been key to revitalizing the VOA brand across the region where not long ago it was associated by many with an outmoded style and believed by some to actually represent a deliberate effort from the U.S. government to attain cultural penetration. So built on this grasp of the present-day markets as much as on the joint goals of reach and of impact, the placement strategy for VOA in Latin America has hinged on the finding the best possible candidates in each of the 18 countries that we target, what we might call securing a spot in the right neighborhood. So we now have an impressive roster of affiliates that includes many of the top-rated radio and TV networks from Mexico to Central America, the Andean countries, the Southern Cone, and of course in Haiti. So to gain access to these large media and their correspondingly large audiences, BBG keeps building on what we call for short the U.S. Bureau model. This is a powerful means of both explaining and discussing U.S. policy to the region by embedding that analysis within the LATAM news broadcasts. That VOA has taken so well in this role shows, first of all, the competency of the LATAM division. They're covering the most relevant stories, delivering them in the most suitable formats, and they're also doing outstanding work, alerting our regional media partners, the news directors, the producers, the anchors in all these 18 markets on what is being covered by VOA on any given day. So in my supportive capacity under the Office of Strategy and Development, the IBB Office of OSD, I'm in daily touch with the VOA LATAM division to convey feedback from current and potential affiliates, to weigh in on programming decisions and changes, to map out marketing, events, and travel, of course, and to assess the myriad components of a winning strategy. We have an organic relationship, in fact, each of us playing complementary roles in order to score points as a BBG team. So, and this year, we as a team organized 2 separate conferences attended by key officials from 24 of our most important or most strategic Spanish language affiliates. The theme that dominated both conversations was that VOA matters significantly to them as a go-to source on the U.S. and as a journalistic model to emulate. Our affiliates all brought up how international broadcasters from other parts, from Russia, from China, from Venezuela, Iran, among others, are basically expanding in Latin America. But they hold VOA in much higher esteem than those, and with regard to the journalistic integrity and the relevance of its content, there is no contest. They also shared with us a number of instances on how it is that VOA adds value to the LATAM media market by shedding light on news events and information that they're either unaware of or unable to cover on their own. So I'm going to give you 2 focal examples of how we have become an influential news source in Latin America. When earlier this year, unaccompanied minors started arriving by the tens of thousands at the U.S. border from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, VOA became a vital link to the unfolding story, and it started co-producing programs with its leading affiliates in the region, in Central America and in Mexico. It sent reporters to the border, in fact, and it increased the number of live reports for radio and television audiences that were eager to get the facts from a reliable source. And only a few months earlier, social unrest had erupted in Venezuela. Dozens of protesters were killed and hundreds more were injured in clashes with official forces. So this huge story, whose urgency we still feel, was vigorously suppressed in Venezuela. And some foreign media were in fact expelled from the country, as you might remember. And many local journalists were and are still harassed, vilified, and in other means, through other means, prevented from doing what they should be doing, reporting the news. Yet 2 VOA reporters managed to cover events from Caracas and other cities throughout Venezuela where the demonstrations were taking place. Through their chronicles, VOA let Venezuelans learn about what was going on in their own neighborhoods and across their country. And at the same time, BBG supplied what was a very high demand from its affiliates elsewhere in Latin America, seeking information about developments in Venezuela. So that's an important story. Despite conditions quite unfavorable to expansion in that high-priority country, the fact is that BBG affiliate network there has grown in these past few months, and I think that's remarkable. Whether print, broadcast, and social media, they all report seeing in VOA a vital link to their own lives, to international news events, and to world opinion. So both the Venezuela conflict and the immigration debate here in Washington have been followed closely and for obvious reasons in Latin America. BBG has added something of real value to a large network of affiliates and to the respective audiences, giving them these and other important stories that are being very, very comprehensively covered. Through VOA, BBG ensures that the policies and politics of the U.S. are explained clearly, debated openly, and put into context. Media partnerships, such as we have developed and are continuing to foster in Latin America, are an important platform for the future of U.S. international media.
All right, thank you, Oscar. So, if media partnerships are a platform, it is one that is uniquely positioned within a very rapidly changing media landscape. It gives us the ability to be agile and to be able to work closely with people on the ground and connected with them. Every year we see, in fact every quarter, frankly, we see a new competitor. We see a new media organization rising up in the space, and that our work with them in the media partnerships allows us to connect with them and to reach those new audiences. Because we didn't build a global television channel, it actually has given us an ability to leap over the competition. We have a fleeting moment of envisioning, executing a new and interesting future, a digital and broadcast future together. Paul Marzalak, who's going to speak next, is the Deputy Director of Strategy and is leading the next generation of media partnership platform development. He's brought considerable private sector experience to his work at BBG. He has, and I've relied on him as being a leading thinker of how we need to transform for the future, has managed a number of really significant projects, including our expansion, our fantastic expansion in the FMs in Africa. So, Paul, why don't you come and talk to us about your work?
Thank you, and good morning. I'm going to expand a little bit on the affiliation piece that we've talked about, and before I do so, affiliation as a platform, I do want to point out that this is just one tool in our toolbox, but in some areas it's a pretty great tool. So we'll expand on that a little bit as we go. But the Office of Strategy and Development, where I work, we assist in managing a growing number of affiliates, currently about 2,500 affiliates for all broadcasters on all platforms. It's a significant competitive advantage, especially when you consider these 61 vernaculars in which we do it. There's very, very few others that can make that claim, and they make for a considerable 1-2 punch. But let's acknowledge that these affiliates are not just distribution points, and they're really all about relationships. I'm going to circle back to that a little bit later. I'm going to show you a new tool that we've just developed and just started rolling out that I think is going to help us possibly double the number of affiliates that we have in the next couple of years. And then I'll discuss a little bit about what affiliation sort of, if you will, 2.0 and 3.0 might look like. This is the new toy. It's called BBG Direct, and it's a fairly simple concept. It allows all of our affiliates to download our content over the internet. So you've got video, you've got audio, you've got long-form shows, you've got short-form news reports, all available currently in 55 languages, 55 of our 61 languages. It's one of our 3 new tools that make up our knowledge management system. You may have seen the SMART system, which is about to go agency-wide, which allows all employees to see our strategy and research, really creating transparency down to the lowest level of the organization so all employees can get that stuff. And then obviously there's a CRM that we hook it up with. I feel the need to shout out to Doug Zabransky and Addie Nascimento, who have really wrestled BBG Direct to the ground. It's still in beta, but it is out and it is operating. There's a new update that's very sexy coming in January, and we look forward to that. This is what a Cambodian affiliate would see if they were to go to Direct. And so you've got VOA and RFA content side by side in Khmer. We had a very good November, again, really just sort of the second month, if you will, where we were really at full steam, 4,700 downloads from affiliates, again, of long form, short form, and reports with VOA's Indonesian, Spanish, Ukrainian, English, and Thai services rounding out the top 5. And if you are watching on the webcast and want to get in this game, call me. And so last month, the Indonesian service is crushing it with Direct, not only because they have a very large affiliate base, but they play to it very, very well, 2,500 plus downloads. So over half of the downloads just in the Indonesian service. So it works. It's working extremely well. And there's also a major component of analytics that comes with all this. So that's going to provide us with valuable feedback moving forward about affiliate needs and wants. Again, we hook this up with the CRM. It allows us to not only track who's doing what and where, but we can market to those affiliates, any subset of those affiliates at any given time. So if we've got breaking news coverage, we've got great video of something, if we've got a great breaking report, email blast goes out to that subset of affiliates, directing them to Direct, and they can download it and put it on the air. So again, brand new, but as they mature, I think we're going to greatly expand that affiliate base and significantly increase our news pickups with these new tools. And the best part, there's really no additional cost to the agency. So even with all that, that's really still just affiliations 1.0. That's your basic affiliation model. We'll talk a little bit about what affiliation 2.0 might look like. Oscar told you about the VOA Washington Bureau and U.S. Bureau concept, which is now kind of spreading around. We can view this as customized content that allows BBG journalists and experts to discuss U.S. news and policy on major networks in prime time. And of course, that helps fulfill elements of the VOA charter. But from customized content, we can even go to the next level, and Oscar mentioned this too. We're starting to get into co-production. And we've dabbled in that in a lot of different places. MBN, Al Huda teamed up with Egypt's Al Hayat TV2. VOA did a deal with Pakistan's Express TV, and we've got other irons in the fire in co-production around the agency. The benefits of co-production are obviously significant. The obvious one is you get the additional distribution on their platform, but also the content is much more likely to be relevant when you've got that local partner helping you craft it. I want you to remember that when we do these things, we never lose editorial control. Never happens. Less obvious but also important features of co-productions is it offers our partners training, institutional knowledge, and if you're looking at the long game, which we need to be looking at the long game, that's going to help us with a well-executed, sustainable free press in those local markets. But as rich as the co-production environment could be, we might even want to go a little bit bigger. Some of these relationships, especially LATAM and elsewhere, are going so well that people want to actually take the relationship to the next level. So what would 3.0 look like? Again, it's going to leverage these strengths. 2,500 affiliates and growing. Literally every single day, new affiliates come in, thanks to Doug Boynton and his team who are working it worldwide. The 61 vernacular language situation, if we don't think of that as a competitive advantage, we should. I invite you to take a look at the Zuckerberg Facebook article in Time, I think it was last week, where he talked about the difficulty of wiring, basically the rest of the world, 1,600 languages in India alone. He called that, those markets brutally local markets. So take a peek at that because it might give you some insight. But the third thing is that people take our call. That's not a small thing. And they call us, and there's not a single week that goes by without a major international media company giving us a call or reaching out to us to do a significant collaboration. And I really don't think that we can overstate our ability to build these relationships. It just can't be said of many of our competitors. And when I refer to competitors, I'm not talking DG7, BBC, DW. I'm talking about the rest of the crew. Not a lot of people necessarily lining up to play ball with those groups. So there are stakeholders in the room and stakeholders in town and elsewhere that tend to wonder where our channels are. Obviously, we've got MBN and El Hura, we've got Farsi Washis out there, but you could make an argument that on that particular piece of product, we're a little late. Rob kind of mentioned this a little bit. Being a little late can also be an opportunity. There's a business saying that the second mouse is the one that gets the cheese. And I think that could be very true for us, especially when so much of our target audience is so young and consumes media in so many different ways. If we were to build a traditional 24/7 satellite channel right now, we'd get in the game and that would be good, but we might not win the category and that might not be the intent. But if you can't win the category, I might suggest we think about creating a new category. And we can do that by, again, taking advantage of these key aspects. We could talk about enabling the conversation and connecting audience with our best-in-class vetted partners around the world to actually create the channels themselves. And we'll kind of call them, they're platform agnostic by nature, so we don't really care how they get them. They could get them by mobile, satellite, the web, over the top, radio, and I would even consider, carrier pigeon if it would work in a certain market. Exactly, smoke signals. So think of affiliation as, for lack of a better term, direct-to-consumer / affiliate hybrid channels. And again, all of this with the BBG at the center of gravity, maintaining editorial control and driving the conversation. So again, what can we do on budget right now, considering our current infrastructure? Basically 3 things. I think we should work to try to double our affiliate base. I think we should continue to explore the custom content and co-production, and also take a look at this idea of exploring direct-to-consumer / affiliate hybrid channels. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
So with all due respect to Andre and Susie, I have the best job of all in BBG. In the time remaining to me, let me switch to, well, also before I go on, I have to say, I have to give some props to my old Office of Digital and Design Innovation, that helped power some of the research work, has really helped power the direct system. So good on them. In the time remaining to me, let me switch actually to the Office of Digital and Design Innovation and our digital products and the way that we're changing the way we reach audience. We are in the midst of a great migration, and Paul talked about it, Oscar talked about it, Sonja talked about it, where our traditional media, and Alan Heil talked about it, and I am totally stealing your line, Alan, of the digital, new media and old media to the media of now. That's fantastic. Everyone should steal that line, or whoever's line it is. That should be stolen. In transforming the marketplace, we have the opportunity of taking the power of our old media, our traditional media, and marrying it with our digital media and providing something new. 3 years ago, this agency was spending less than $800,000 on mobile work. And I don't know if Rebecca McMiniman is in this, but she was the one in the back, made the smart idea, made the smart investment of plowing that money into mobile websites, which was the right thing to do with that limited amount of money. RFURL, John Gianvalvo, and hopefully the folks at RFURL on the phone were the ones that first launched the mobile applications, and we have copied and ridden on their shoulders from that point. And they're now taking the lead in making all of our websites mobile responsive. By marrying digital and broadcast, we can build these intimate, engaged relationships using mobile phones. And so today I want to end with hearing from Will Sullivan, who is the Director of Mobile at ODDI, in particular about his strong collaboration that was created between his team and NBN to create one of our newest and I find the most exciting mobile properties and projects that I've been a part of from the outside. So here's where we get to crow, and as a board, we should all feel good about this. When the BBC first launched its first broadband smartphone application, I'm going to read this to make sure get it right. It was very proud of publishing their application in 9 languages. Not long after, Will and his team launched our new smartphone news applications on iPhone and Android in 44 languages. So take that. Under Will's direction, the agency has really taken a strong leap forward. He is a wise man and one that I listen to quite often. He's really putting us into the front ranks of international media corporations. And so, Will, please take us home.
Thank you, Rob. Chairman Schell, board members, BBG directors, colleagues, and members of the public, Mr. Lack. Good luck. Yes, thank you. I'm excited to share with you a quick case study of one of Global Strategy Group's most successful recent launches, Radio Sawa, an Android and iOS mobile application that has been described as the iHeartRadio of the Arabic world. We worked collaboratively with cross-organization teams to launch the product on time, on budget, and within the organization's strategic goals to inform youth in the Middle East. In the digital media world, a lot of modern organizations like Vice, Vox Media, BuzzFeed are structuring themselves in a new kind of three-tiered model where editorial, IT, and product work together to develop new content products, focusing and bringing each of these groups' strengths. For Radio Sawa, we did the same thing. The Radio Sawa team brought their editorial content and audience experience and cultural and design understanding. We brought mobile product development, research, usability skills, app marketing and QA testing and launch tools. And Middle East Broadcasting Network team provided the mobile streaming technology. Pangea provided content management system. SoundCloud provided more mobile podcast support. And we launched Radio Sawa, this gorgeous touch-driven application for Arabic youth that features 7 regional 24/7 music streams, hundreds of radio programs available on demand, including an hourly newscast, the ability to get around censorship and FM broadcast license control in the Mideast from oppressive governments by delivering directly to youth through digital. Besides the music and entertainment offerings, Radio Sawa offers an audience talk-back feature for the popular community-driven radio program Sawa Chat. This community discussion program asks questions of the audience for their opinions and feedback, and the app allows the audience to record a 30-second clip and send it directly into producers through the application. These audio clips are then curated, edited, and programmed into future broadcasts and also available in the application. Along with connecting with the audience interactively, Radio Sawa retooled their news content team to create a new experimental story format. It's very visually filled, as you can see. Stories are written shorter and more conversational, with lots of social media embeds and interactive features to engage youth audiences. Content topics include news, music, entertainment, tech, and social trends and sports. This transformational storytelling experiment has proven very successful, and the app traffic reports indicate this is one of the most popular features besides the regional music. We launched Radio Sawa in the end of June this year, and this map shows the country where users have downloaded around the world. As you can see, the Middle East and North Africa is very popular. It surged to the top 3 ranks in the app stores for music in Kuwait, Egypt, Jordan, Mauritania, and Yemen, and also hit the top 30 ranks in more than 25 countries around the Middle East and Africa. And you also notice the United States, we also hit the top 70 spot for the music category in the United States, which is pretty exceptional considering the entire application is all in Arabic and all the content is Arabic. Audience feedback has been amazingly positive. We have 4.3 and 4.0 average audience ratings. One of the most interesting things that I'm really excited about and why I think this is truly a successful project is the weekly install rate for Radio Sawa, now that we're out of kind of the launch period, is the second highest among our portfolio of applications in the BBG, behind VOA. So Radio Sawa is now getting more and more audience week over week than any other entity, including Al Hurra, which is their sister news network. We're not finished yet. The mobile ODDI team and Radio Sawa and MBN just started working on the 1.1 version, adding more features, new content streams. This is just one of many, many projects that the Global Strategy portfolio has built and worked with entities, balancing the needs of editorial, IT, and product to expand digital reach for the BBG.
just to say finally, my tenure, my year plus minus a couple of weeks tenure in this role has been consumed by Ukraine and ISIL and Ebola and Central African Republic and all of that. What makes me smile, what makes me very happy every day is the quiet, behind-the-scenes, innovative transformation that global strategy units are doing. Every day they're moving us forward. And these are 4 extraordinary individuals who are joined with many other extraordinary individuals and 4 extraordinary projects. And I just want to thank them very much. And I'm going to move on and we can talk about TSI.
Very good. Thank you, Rob. A slight errata to my first presentation. Almost like, let's say, mentioning the Lakers and not mentioning Kobe Bryant. I failed to mention Ina Catherine Buckley, who drove the POV process. So, Ina, thank you. If you'll allow me, I would like to dedicate this particular part of the presentation to Denise Mayer. She was one of our administrative officers who about 3 weeks ago lost her battle with cancer. And she was unbelievable in front of the entire agency, working harder than ever, even as her disease debilitated her. So, Denise, this one's to you. Okay, driving transformation. You'll forgive me the emotion and also my passion. Sometimes I get passionate about these things. Driving transformation. Premises, shared services organization. Okay, just like administration. We serve the broadcast entities and IBB. We have many disciplines. I mean, this is a $170 million organization that is truly global in nature. And we bring everybody to the table as part of this supply chain management that I've talked to you about, and that really drives all of our interactions. 24/365. We're changing this plane from a DC-3 taking off of JFK to a 747 or a 787 landing in San Francisco. And there's lots of turbulence. Okay? Change is accomplished on the fly. But at the same time, with as little disruption as possible. Were we completely successful all the time in not introducing disruption? No, but our record is absolutely outstanding in that regard as we move this airplane into construction. There's just so much to tell you and so little time, but we'll go very, very fast, so be prepared. All right, so global operations. To the director, we have 5 areas. The Office of the CFO, of the CIO, engineering, IT, resources, because we're a large enough organization that we have a financial and human resources component within it, and then support services, which encompasses all of the support of all of our platforms. What do we do? What do we do? Well, we do the global BBG distribution. We distribute the overwhelming majority of BBG content and also the State Department's embassy network. Shortwave, medium wave, FM, TV, web, streaming, mobile, social, we distribute everything. As a matter of fact, you could say that outside of China, we're the widest distribution portfolio of any global media organization, period. Global BBG infrastructure. At the Cohen Building, we do everything from, believe it or not, the toilets, to your fabulous networking. Stations at the bureaus, we take care of IT, telephony, and all of the networks. And also the global internet anti-censorship, one of our proudest achievements in close collaboration with RFA's OTF. From literally the LA area to the Mariana Islands. So, you know, except for that part of the Pacific of Papua New Guinea and so on and so forth, we go everywhere. And let's start with engineering and transmissions. It's composed of broadcast technologies, which is a deployment branch that is responsible for RFM installations, for all of the technology-driven innovations in terms of shortwave and medium wave transmitters, and frequency management, the unheralded heroes of distribution for all of the grantees and the distribution networks. Steve Bratcher and his team on a constant basis, just negotiate the frequencies that we use to inform the entire world. Operation and stations, they run our global station network and also the network support, all of the logistics behind the scenes that make things happen. Distribution on a global scale. Let me give you an idea of what that's all about. We distribute the majority of BBG content, right, with 197 transmitters at 97 global sites. 14 satellites, C and KU band for distribution and direct-to-home. This includes, all of the direct-to-home satellites that our end users actually work, but also all of the C-band distribution that takes us point-to-point and to all of our affiliates. Okay. 5 major gateways at the Cohen Building in Germany, in the Czech Republic, in Kuwait, and in the Philippines, so that we have redundancy throughout the entire world. 9 main video channels, 1 HD on Hotbird alone, and that is the main satellite in the Middle East, the most popular without a shadow of a doubt. That gives us all of our, a lot of our audiences in Iran, for example, a lot of our audiences throughout the Middle East with Al Hura and Al Hura Iraq and Al Hura HD, our first HD channel. 99 outbound audio channels on 312 paths. The complexity of distribution network is something to be seen. And, of course, extensive Bureau return feeds for contribution. For example, Al Youm's program for MBN has returns from a lot of these cities. We have returns in Baghdad, Beirut, Cairo, Dubai, Jerusalem, and Kabul. And, of course, something that never really gets talked about that is becoming more and more of an important part of our infrastructure, and that is a content distribution network contract with Akamai, the largest provider in the world, where we literally have tens of thousands of servers operating on our behalf and distributing content to all of our populations online in a far more efficient manner than if we did it all out of the Cohen Building, for example, or out of one of the grantees. Just to give you an idea, for those of you not familiar, this is, just one small antenna in one of our stations. This is in the Mariana Islands in Tinian. And it gives you an idea of the size of the operations that we run. Some of the largest transmitters in the world, transmitters that are often 20 times larger than the largest one authorized in the United States. Okay. These are serious events here. This dish... That was shortwave. That was shortwave. So this is a dish slightly larger than your DirecTV or Dish Network dish that we use for distribution. It has to, it has to go through bad weather on a regular basis. This is in Thailand, and this is a medium wave in the lovely Djibouti coast. Okay, and that serves most of the Arabian Peninsula, including Yemen, but also some to Somalia and some to Ethiopia. Okay, myth busting number 2. We had one in the first one, we have one in the second one. The BBG IBB wants to kill radio distribution. Not true. For example, from a shortwave standpoint, we want to end shortwave where no longer effective and absolutely keep it where it still is a cost-effective price-performance ratio-driven platform. Since 2011, we've saved $12.32 million in savings, 29% of our total variable cost operation, okay? And that goes right to the bottom line in making sure that we continue to produce content as our platform portfolio continues to grow. But interestingly enough, we also have shortwave capacity building, right? So, it might be sort of counterintuitive. Everybody thinks that shortwave is on the decline. But as part of supply chain optimization, sometimes it makes sense to do so. And I'll explain why. First of all, we installed and brought live in fiscal year 10 a state-of-the-art rotatable in Kuwait. I would like to call it the LifeStar because it is just fabulous. Absolutely. Isn't that fantastic? And it rotates. It can serve 360 degrees, right? It is one of the most modern, maybe the most modern antenna in the world, right? And this operates in Kuwait, and I'll explain to you why in a little bit, right? Don't you just love it? I love it. All right. I'm just hair in the back of my neck. All right. But we continue building it, actually. We're building new shortwave in Kuwait as we speak right now. And you ask, why? Because our electricity costs in Kuwait are so low that transmitting 1 hour of shortwave out of Kuwait costs me $2. Most of our leases are in the $150 to $200 range, and most of our other stations are in the $30 to $100 range. So when I bring a transmission from Tinian, I bring a transmission from the Philippines, I bring a transmission from a lease in Ulaanbaatar into Kuwait, I'm saving sometimes 100-fold, that money. So that investment gets paid off in about 1.5 years, and that's a good deal. Okay? So, medium wave, AM, ending where not cost effective. Over the last few years, it saved us $4.2 million. Deploying new capacity in Khost, Afghanistan, one of the most dangerous places in the world. In fiscal year 10, we went live. 18 hours a day. It has been working nonstop since, with redundant diesel generators whose delivery of fuel comes escorted by a heavy military environment, okay? Because that's that part of the world. Ambassador Crocker, I don't know if you've been in the Coast Province, but it's right next to the Pakistan border. And it is, as a matter of fact, some of our folks were kidnapped during the installation and process. We were fortunate that we were able to get them without any harm being done to them. In Ussurisk, in the Russian Federation, in fiscal year 12, we deployed a very large transmitter to target directly into Pyongyang for RFA and VOA content. And when Mr. Putin decided that the freedom of the press was not such a great thing, we actually replaced it with a transmitter in Incheon, Korea, and on a lease basis in fiscal year 14, replacing Ussurisk. And I got to pay kudos to Gary Thatcher and to Ambassador King at the State Department, who were absolutely essential in making this happen. Without their dedication, it could not have happened, period. So, FMs. Adding FM capacity in the last 3 years. Well, first of all, we added 8 additional transmitters, dual transmitters, into Afghanistan, bringing our total to 15, which means that we have the entire country pretty much covered in every major city, absolutely covered with great signals from our broadcasters. Central African Republic in Bangui, okay, just recently, with the disturbances in Bangui, there was one antenna, one signal on the air, and it was our signal. Interestingly enough, during the installation, one of our colleagues had to kill a poisonous snake in his room. These things can get hairy, right? In Libya, at the height of the absolute crisis, when everything was going to hell in the handbasket in that country, we were the first ones to install a transmitter in Benghazi, in Tripoli, and in Misrata. We had to go through boats, trains, planes, and automobiles. I think John Candy was part of the installation team, okay, but we got it done. In Chad, in N'Djamena, recently. In Juba, South Sudan, at the birth of the new country. Also, recently, the only outlet on the air during disturbances. In Mali, Bamako, when the situation in Mali became very, very, very serious about 1.5 years ago, we came in, and in about 2.5 months, we went from procurement to installation to on air. A remarkable performance. In Mauritania, Nouakchott, we just installed a new one, in the Maghreb to ensure that we have a presence there besides Morocco. And Dakar, Senegal, and Bujumbura, Burundi will be installed in January 2015. So, BBG Radio is alive and well where it makes sense. Over 1 million hours of transmission per year, more than any other transmitter. 300,000 in shortwave, 70,000 in medium wave, and interestingly enough, as that grows, 800,000 in FMs. Okay, so global reach, without a doubt, right? But also record reliability. This year marked the highest reliability ratings of this agency since they first started getting recorded. And that is significant because most of these transmitters are in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s, and in their 70s. The parts no longer exist. They're manufactured on site by our staff, an unbelievably dedicated staff that keeps these things humming like clockwork. $1.2 billion worth of assets with $3 million a year to maintenance and repair. In the private sector, you'd be laughed out of the room. Okay? These people make it work. Unbelievable dedication. Look at that. Last 5 years. Okay? From 99.62 in 2009 to 99.85. Again, these are 40, 50, 60-year-old transmitters in the middle of storms. You might wonder why 99.73 is in there, right? And that's because by 2 stations. One in Djibouti, where the entire power grid went dark. And the other one because we had a serious storm in Sri Lanka and some of our antennas went down. That's it. Otherwise, it just keeps on going. These people are fantastic. All right? In the CIO office, global networks, project management office, telecommunications, enterprise architecture, and internet anti-censorship. The ones that are highlighted I'm going to talk about. No disrespect to the other ones, but I have about 20 minutes, 15 minutes to do all of this. Global networks. Inside of the Cohen building, we have a state-of-the-art network that I would put up against anybody in the industry, in the federal government, for 80% of the building. We'll complete the next 10, 20% in fiscal year 15. Internet connectivity, we have massive redundant capacity out of this building that services all of our outgoing and incoming needs for content distribution, for content population of this other distribution systems, and of course for internet consumption. And our global MPLS network. And this is the part where, I go a little technical and everybody's eyes glaze over, so please stay with me. All right, so imagine an MPLS network as fiber in the cloud. The old model is that you would stretch a fiber from here to Penang in the Philippines, and you had to control the entire thing, okay? And all the possibilities that would happen, like, for example, an excavator taking something out in Manila, right? And so we got away from that model, and what we do is we go from the Cohen building to a provider, the provider as a massively redundant network, the cloud, right? And then we have a connection from the end of that cloud into the Philippines. Actually, two connections on both sides. And so what happens is we completely outsource all of the risk and the maintenance and everything else, and our cost goes down dramatically. Absolutely dramatically, right? And why employ MPLS? Because as we deploy more HD channels, we can either buy additional transport on the satellite at millions of dollars or additional transport on MPLS at tens of thousands of dollars. And that is just a ratio that cannot be, cannot be ignored. Scalability, price-performance ratio, and replacing point-to-point satellite distribution with a far more cost-effective environment. We've already saved several millions of dollars in that effort alone. Telecommunications, our telephony infrastructure going to a total migration, migrating to voice over IP, Skype and Link, a legacy cleanup and consolidation. Believe it or not, in this office, there were literally thousands of lines that had not been used in a decade, in 15 years, but nobody ever removed them. So we were paying Verizon, who were very happy to collect, monthly fees for every single one of these lines. We went through a complete cleanup, thousands of circuits. Mobile consolidation, we consolidated across the entire enterprise so that people were not administering their own things, closed over 100 inactive accounts, and now we have negotiated far better contracts so that our cost per telephone has gone down by almost a half. Overall savings in excess of $1 million a year. Internet anti-censorship, just unbelievable, right? High visibility BBG success. And here I got to give kudos to Michael Meehan. Without him, this would not have been possible. From 1.6 million funding in 2009 to what was a very challenging 25.5 million in 2014 because 13 million of that was not funded. We made it happen nevertheless. Close collaboration with RFA's OTF program. And I could dedicate a 30-minute presentation just to this topic alone, easily, right? But proxy servers, emails, newsletters, satellite terminals, circumvention apps, and anonymity tools, we covered the gamut. All of the other international broadcasters rely on RFA and the BBG to provide them with guidance and with tools and the direction, the strategic direction in this area. Now look at that number. Over 1 trillion hits a year from the most restrictive countries in the world, from China, from Vietnam, from Iran, from Syria. The firewall, we laugh at you, okay? Because it needs to be broken, and it is being broken on a daily basis. Just on one of our tools alone, we have 1.6 billion hits a day, which means that there are literally hundreds of thousands of hits by the time I finish this presentation. And that makes my heart warm. Constant innovation in the face of censorship. In Iran, Siphon was cracked by the Iranian government. We came up with Siphon 2, or we sponsored Siphon 2. They cracked that. We came up with Siphon 3. They cracked that. We've moved on to the next generation of Siphon. So the traffic goes like this, but it just keeps on growing. All right, information technology comprised of 4 parts: enterprise platforms and storage, applications, security, and digital management division. So this is such a wide area of so many things that I figured I would give you a perspective of where we were and where we are, okay? 2009, every server under Chinese cyber army control. Sobering, huh? They could have literally taken this agency down with one keystroke. And we were under that threat from the time we discovered it for about 4 months until it was finally cleaned. I very much commiserate with Michael Linton and everything he's going through, and with the State Department and the issues with the email. I mean, this is a constant threat to anybody who has a cyber infrastructure. We wrestled them out of hundreds of servers and out of hundreds of workstations. And 4 months, and we were clean. And I hope that we keep clean. Hundreds of obsolete, misconfigured servers, multiple obsolete storage systems, obsolete and poorly patched operating systems. The reason why they were able to come in to start with, because they took advantage of those frailties. Obsolete and unconnected email system. The way to get your BlackBerry back then was to send your email to Gmail and then go and get it from Gmail with BlackBerry. Not exactly the best solution, right? And a disastrous Delete Plus implementation that, quite honestly, it went down on almost a daily basis and created enormous havoc for all of the broadcasters. Is it perfect now? No, but my God, we're light years ahead. Poor overall reliability, high stress, and high cost. Okay? The environment was just noxious and toxic and very stressful for the people that worked here. BBG IT in 2014. Stable, reliable, secure infrastructure. First agency to deploy cloud-based Office 365, including unified communications, where your phone messages actually come into your email, and SharePoint on the cloud, where we host, for example, some of the CRM deployments and the smart system will be there, right? And one of the highest fed users of the virtualization. Now, I could do a 30-minute presentation on virtualization, and I guarantee that you would all be asleep. But needless to say, you can transform hundreds of servers into tens of servers and deploy a server in 20 minutes instead of in a week and a half. And that is just an enormous advantage. If you want to hear about virtualization, just call me, right, Paul? Okay. One of the highest fed users of cloud services. Okay. The majority of our applications, of mission-critical applications, are either on shared services or cloud services, which serves as a disaster recovery mechanism for this entire building, which we otherwise could not afford. Right? So it has multiple purposes. And by the way, just recently, because of where we stand, we were tapped by Health and Human Services to actually host several of their IT racks. This would not have been possible in 2009. Their IT budget is larger than our agency budget. Okay, so I'm very proud that we are helping them, and as a recognition of where we come from. From laggards to leaders in 5 years, period. Rapid evolution, enterprise reliability, because talk is cheap, delivery is where it's at. There you go. So our lowest availability is 99.92. Okay, and that's on the Delete side. Otherwise, several systems where it is basically 100%, 99.7, 99.8. I would compare that to any enterprise in the world, except for things like the security, the stock exchanges and mission-critical hospitals, but their budgets are 10 times what ours are. So I'm happy with this trade-off. Okay, best set of signals, lower costs. In Afghanistan, we got the entire country covered with 15 FMs, with 2 medium waves, with satellite, and with shortwave. In North Korea, we have a powerful signal directly into Pyongyang, both from Incheon and from Taiwan, and of course shortwave. In Iran, we have massive satellite coverage, we have shortwave coverage, we have medium wave coverage, we have massive internet anti-censorship coverage. That country is well covered, and the statistics of usage show it. Across Africa, you saw our deployments of FMs all over the place. In China, okay, we have the best signal into China ever in the history of this agency through Telstar 18. Let me tell you a little bit about that. VOA and RFA on Telstar 18, now sharing that platform. Most popular satellite in China, unjammed, uncensored access to vital information, and now in 4 languages, Mandarin, Cantonese, Tibetan, and Uyghur, 24/7. Hong Kong protests. CNN, BBC operate on the cable systems and on Chinese-controlled satellites. The moment that their announcer would say, and now we're going to cover the Hong Kong protests, they would go dark, literally black on users' TVs, right? Not the BBG, live. This is VOA on Telstar 18 just last week. You can see the gentleman there being removed. This is unprecedented image into China, into a satellite dish population estimated now in the hundreds of millions. There we go. And going all the way from China to the Cohen building. The Open Space Project. Consolidating staff from the Switzer building, driven by HHS expansion. Driven by GSA, paid by GSA. Savings of $1.3 million in fiscal year 14, $2.6 million in fiscal year 15. 10-year calculated savings, $36 million. Not just to this agency, but because we were getting relocated to commercial space to the taxpayer. So you're all welcome. Okay? Potential Cohen savings, if we do the same thing throughout the rest of the building where available, could be in excess of $100 million over the next 10 years. They get plugged directly into the mission rather than in wasteful use of real estate space in what is one of the most expensive places in the world. These are what some of our offices looked like before. One of our corridors, albeit the worst one, in my view, right? And I won't tell you what it looks like. But this is the new space. And I invite you all to go upstairs to the 4th floor. It will take you 3 minutes. You'll enjoy it, right? This is a modern workspace environment in the federal government. Nobody thought it would be possible. Nobody thought it would be possible in less than a year. We got it done with full agreement with the unions, paid by GSA, and being deployed as we speak by the TSI team. Global operations. Spectacular turnarounds, and we're going to continue to bring them to the table. Everywhere where we touch, we're going to turn it around. The people in this building believe in this mission, and with the proper guidance, they all make unbelievable efforts to accomplish this. Ungodly hours. These are fabulous people that need to be recognized. Driving transformation, lowering costs, so that others may tell a story. Okay? And so let's hear from those others.
There is no VOA without IBB's Global Operations team. There are dozens of examples where innovations by Global Operations have helped VOA perform its mission more effectively. Perhaps the biggest is putting VOA's China broadcasts onto Telstar 18.
2014年10月2号星期四的抗疫示威活动，今天
Moving RFA to the satellite TV stream has been an enormous help, especially during the Hong Kong protests, because while we were not prepared to do full-blown television here, we were able to broadcast our radio programs and run live streaming, interjected with 4 simultaneous Twitter feeds on hashtags related to what was happening.
BBG's global operations has been helpful to us this past year, and I found that getting the balance between supporting and overseeing the grantees is a delicate and difficult balancing act, and global operations has made some progress in that endeavor. Out of the CFO shop and budget was much improved over past years, transparency, and I think it was a real solid presentation.
By providing HD access to Al-Hurra on Hotbird, TSI helped improve Al-Hurra's market position in a very competitive satellite broadcasting environment. Also with TSI support, Radio Sao was able to launch its first FM channel in Nouakchott, Mauritania.
Initiatives like the text messaging, email, piramideo, and providing access to the internet outside the Cuban grid have been instrumental and essential in providing the free flow of information to the people in Cuba.
The numbers tell the story. VOA reached 5.7 million Chinese in 2009, and now, according to the most recent survey, we reached 24.3 million.
And that, folks, concludes my presentation. Susie, your turn.
And I promise that we're close to the end. But we can't close before I recognize the third component of the IBB, the Global Communications team. We are a small but important team made up of public affairs, congressional liaison, graphic design and photography, as well as board operations. Our dedicated team, often working behind the scenes, keeps Congress and the American public informed of the activities of the BBG and the board. We are service providers working with elements across the agency and at the networks to create high-quality deliverables such as the annual report, special events, and other online properties. Our team also includes board operations, where it is our great pleasure to provide support to our esteemed governors as they carry out their responsibilities as part-time head of agency. And finally, in conclusion, I hope today has given you a sense of all the components of the IBB, as well as TSI, and how we are working together to effectively, efficiently, and creatively support the agency's mission to inform, engage, and connect people around the world in support of freedom and democracy. Although our budget and staffing trends are downward, our employee feedback makes clear that individual belief and commitment to their work remains high, about 90% in the last Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey. As an interim management team, we are proud of the remarkable dedication of both IBB and TSI employees to fulfilling the high demands of our mission. And with that, we'll take questions.
So you guys ran way over, but it was very impressive. Not just the running over part. So we do have, even though we're over time, we do have 5-10 minutes for questions. So does any governors, anybody have any questions for the group here? So thorough that there's no questions. Ryan.
Thanks, and it really was an impressive presentation all the way around. As particularly Rob and Andre went through a list of very impressive achievements and innovations that have some of which I was not aware of, but clearly has taken the BBG to a place immeasurably different and better than where we were 5 years ago. I guess I have to come back to where you started, Andre, with the numbers. You did talk about how budget and personnel cuts were hampering you in some aspects, particularly in HR. Yet I have to ask myself, if you're able to do all that you have done over the last 5 years at a time when both numbers of people and numbers of dollars are declining, I guess I would probably need a remedial lesson in why those declines are really hurting IBB operations, because you have told, you and Rob have told an amazing success story of achievements over 5 years, the same years that budgets and personnel have been declining. So I guess as a governor, I've got to ask myself, maybe the trajectory is not wrong. That fewer people are doing more with less.
So let me address that question. What you saw in these presentations are two radically different levels of maturity in areas. Right? TSI, this effort started 5 years ago. And quite honestly, the budget at TSI 5 years ago was not a low budget, but a lot of it was not used in the best way, because there was a set of legacy platforms, insularity, and quite honestly, an unwillingness to move forward into other platforms to optimize scenarios. And so what has happened with TSI is that as those improvements, as that revolution took hold, right, we were able to internally generate savings because we were making the operation so much more efficient in every single step of the way. Let me give you an example that is very, very, to the core of that issue. we went from our old transmission methodology into a new transmission method called AMC in 2010. And just that simple transition saved over $2 million a year in electricity costs with no effect to the signal, right? That is the type of thing where you can bring savings to the table immediately, right? The number of servers that we were servicing back then was in the several hundreds. We have reduced that by an enormous amount, and as a result, we've reduced the number of people that we need to manage those servers. So every time that somebody in TSI retires, they don't necessarily get replaced. As a matter of fact, my target ratio is 3 to 1, and I think we're at about 2 to 1 right now. So from that maturity standpoint, we've been able to completely change the equation. In satellite distribution versus MPLS, it will cost me 1/10 to distribute it via the cloud fiber than via the satellite if I have to buy additional bandwidth. So that's where those savings came in, and where we are far better from an operational standpoint at a much lower price point. By the way, this is what you expect in the private sector, right? IT budgets rarely go up in the private sector. They go down. By expectation is that the cost of technology go down constantly. Our adoption of the cloud services has allowed me to not have to deal with our internal email system, right? So all of the optimization of contracts, we used to rely a lot on contractors to support all of our services. Most of them are gone, right? Because we don't need them anymore. Our staff can deal with it now. In the administrative side of the house, we're just at the beginning of that cycle, right? We have now inherited all of these applications that were siloed, all of these manual processes. I trust that over the next 5 years, okay, if given the opportunity, what will happen is that as these manual processes go out the door, right, we will see the same type of situation where for every 2 to 3 people that retire, we hire 1 person back, right? Because that's what we need to do. We are a service organization. If we can strip $1 out of our operations and give it to the broadcasters, that's what we should do, right? And so the supply chain optimization is all about absolutely squeezing every dollar we can, while at the same time maximizing the throughput and the availability of our systems. We've done it in one area, we're going to do it in the other. We've already have a good start, and the momentum is with us. So
there's only one thing I'd
out of the way.
I think there's only one thing I would add that we haven't necessarily seriously grappled with as an agency yet. And I agree with Andre, and he shows obviously a lot of passion and skill for making these transformations. And I think this extends to every entity here as well, and that's the human skill transformation. We have to not only invest in our systems and really build a much more efficient systems, but in operations, we also need to continue to invest in our people. And in large measure, I think if there is a morale issue across the federal entities, I think that could be ameliorated by having increased investments in the skill base of our people. And every time that someone does leave the organization for a new position or for retirement, it is a special moment to hire someone that will lead us into the future. And so one of the things that Andy Lack and the management of IBB have to work on is a really strong human development plan.
Great, thanks. Any additional questions? Nope. There, Ken, go.
A lot of questions, which we can, very impressive presentations, extraordinarily well done, and lots of interesting questions for discussion later. Formulate, Rob, I was just wondering, when we partner with different networks, as you presented in Pakistan and elsewhere, who are we competing with for these partnerships? Are there other news sources? Are they private? Are they public? Or are there other civilian international broadcasters? How does that work?
Well, there's a couple of models. First of all, in many closed countries, we were, and the BBC or Deutsche Welle were the only voices at that time in international media. As those markets have opened up, we are, in essence, have a lot of competition. I put that in quotes, competition with new media organizations that are native organizations. Ambassador Crocker had talked about the Moby Group and others in Afghanistan. The partnerships, in terms of partnerships, the work of the BBC and Deutsche Welle are moving forward and trying to rely and develop those partnerships where they can work with them to create content, to distribute content. Deutsche Welle boasts over 3,000 partners that they have. Now, if you go in and ask them, of those 3,000, what are significant partnerships that you're really developing, or that are smaller than a very small radio station out in the bush, that number goes down precipitously. Through Bruce Sherman working with the entity heads, we have pursued the development of top-tier partnerships where we're engaging them editorially and building new programming with them. And so we'll see a swing back of DG7, our Western partners, trying to enroll those media organizations. I think we're ahead of the curve. But what we're really seeing now is Russia Today, CCTV, and others coming very into Africa and Latin America, putting a lot of money on the table, putting a lot of effort. Now, Vladimir Putin actually went and launched the RT service in Argentina. An amazing endorsement from that government to bring its highest leader to launch a new information service in a country. And so we have to contend with those folks, and they're the ones who are actually building the market share. And a lot of what we do is provide clear information about U.S. policy, but every day David and Libby and John Gianvalvo and others are transmitting skills, not only journalistic skills, but management skills to these new partners. And so we have a changing relationship with them. Again, I would say, I don't want to put too fine of a point on, but TSI has done an amazing job, and we spend millions and millions of dollars in that. Half of our audience, and whether you reach or not reach as a factor of impact, half of our audience comes through these media partnerships. We really have the opportunity, as Paul laid out, to develop this into a new model, a new 21st century model, and it's a very exciting opportunity.
Okay. Very nice presentation, you guys. Next time, for the next round, we'll do shorter presentations, more questions, and come in. But this was a good first step. It's 11:40 right now, and at noon is the Burke Awards downstairs. So we're going to adjourn the meeting now, and to give everybody time to get downstairs. The next board meeting will be held here at the BBG headquarters on February 18th, 2015. I will work closely with the other governors and BBG Executive Director Susie Carroll to develop the agenda for each board meeting. In the coming weeks, any governors are encouraged to give us input regarding other topics they would like to see discussed at the next meeting. And hopefully Karen will be sworn in by then, and Dr. Aaron will be there as well, and we will have almost a full complement of the board at that meeting. Would any governor, is there anything else, any other business any governors wish to raise at this meeting? Anybody want to move that we adjourn? Moved. Second by Mr. Kempner. All those in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. This BBG board meeting is now officially concluded. So see everybody downstairs.